What's going on, guys? So it's me, Daniel from Tech Tuning, and today I have the next video about my 1985 Toyota Celica GTS. Today we're going to be changing the clutch slave cylinder, and I also have a stainless steel braided clutch line, which I'm going to be swapping in as well. And my slave cylinder isn't particularly bad, nor is the line, but I've already done the master cylinder, which did go bad, and that was like an emergency thing. Like, the car wasn't drivable and I was going to work and then it went bad, so I couldn't really make a video out of that. But when I bought that new master cylinder, I decided to also just buy the slave and a new line, just as a bit of reassurance, because they were cheap enough and I got them at a discount that I figured it'd be better to just do a once over on the whole system. And I'll show you guys before we got into it and we start taking things apart. But my slave cylinder, while it's not bad and still works, it is a little old. The rubber's kind of worn away. Same thing with the line on it. I'm pretty sure that they are the originals. So that's why I'm going to be going ahead and doing this swap. And I also just want to give a bit of an update on the Celica overall. So at this point, I'm not sure whether this video is going to come out before or after the final part of that timing chain series that I did before. So right now the Celica is running and driving perfectly good. Not perfectly, but it's driving good. So I'll give a bit of an update on that right now as well before we get into this tutorial. And yeah, so let's talk about that. So in the last part of the timing chain tutorial, everything was disassembled and we were ready to take off the timing chain. And now the car is completely put back together, the dual row is installed, and in regard to that noise that I was getting, that's completely gone. So I was right in my diagnosis that the timing chain was slapping. I went over that in the part 2, that my tensioner was completely sealed shut. So normally it's a little hydraulic piston that pushes against the chain and that's what keeps the tension on it. Mine was locked shut, and I don't know whether that happened during or after the engine rebuild from the previous owners, but that is resolved now. There's no noise, and beyond that, the car was still running a little funny when I got it. You would be driving it and you'd be cruising for a while and it would just sort of start to hiccup and kind of buck back and forth. So I did a bunch of diagnosis to that. I ran fuel injector cleaner, I checked out some of the other things, like I checked that, I checked the injectors, I checked the fuel filter to make sure nothing was clogged, I did the spark plugs and the spark wires, I checked the ignition timing, and all of that stuff was good other than that weird timing issue. But I think I dove into that a little bit in the timing chain tutorial, that the timing wasn't wrong. I checked the timing and the degrees was correct, and the cylinders were firing in the correct order. It's just that the rotor was input into the cam gear 180 degrees backwards and the spark plug wires were flipped. So I didn't quite want to mess with that because I wasn't exactly sure if that was the entirety of the problem. So once the timing chain was finished and the car was drivable again, I did bring it to a local shop that I trust their work when it comes to older cars, and they took a look at it. They fixed the issue with the rotor, which, as I thought, it just had to be flipped back and the spark plug wires had to be swapped again. And they also diagnosed the issue with why it was driving funny, and I left my Haynes manual with them just as like a bit of an aid. So they were checking over all the vacuum lines, which is new to me. I'm not 100% sure on what every single line goes to and what it's there for. And what they found is that my EGR lines, 2 of them were flipped. So like I said, vacuum lines are new to me. I don't particularly know which lines were flipped and which they swapped back. But the conclusion to that was that from whoever did the engine rebuild, they must have put them in backwards, because what was happening is the car was pulling too much vacuum and it was running too lean. So that's why when you were cruising, it would just sort of start to lose its power. And it wouldn't die, it never shut off on me, but it would just start to hiccup and it was a very uncomfortable ride. So they sorted that out. The Celica runs and drives great. It's been very reliable. I've put probably about 300 miles on it or so since I've gotten the car back from them. And I'm still working on editing the part 3. I did lose a bit of the footage for that when I was recording the tutorial. I'm not sure how much yet, which is why I haven't made that tutorial, but I have to go through and figure out what I lost, because as I was recording, the camera battery died and I didn't get any of the footage that I thought I was filming. So I'm gonna have to go through that, figure out what I need to kind of fill in with. I did realize it a little after I was taking it, so I did take a short clip on my phone to cover what bases that I sort of skipped over because the camera went out. And so that's going to be coming up soon. But for now, I'm working on doing some of the other stuff now that the car is running good again. I've been kind of putting it through the ropes, just driving it around as much as I can. And right now, there's still some issues, but like I said, I'm just trying to drive it around, get a feel for things, figure out what else needs to be done before I can do some of the other mods. And I'm also going to be just test driving it and making sure everything is still reliable and safe. So right now, the other things that are going on with the car is that power steering rack that I needed is still dripping. I thought that there was a Celica super rack that I had gotten a hold of for free that I could swap in, and I did try that when I was doing the timing chain, because I also had to do the oil pan gasket since that was leaking, and it actually broke in half when I pulled the timing chain cover off. So when I finished the timing chain, I went back to do the oil pan gasket, which required me to pull out the power steering rack to make room to reach some of the bolts underneath the engine pan. And in doing that, I pulled out the rack, I put in the super rack, and thankfully it didn't leak. But unfortunately, what I later found out is that while it fits and it is functional inside the car, the Celica Supra has about a 1-inch wider track width than the Celica, which is about 1 inch shorter. So what that means is when I went to put in my base alignment just to get the car drivable until I could get a proper alignment done, since it was 1 inch wider, the inner and outer tie rods also stuck out 1 inch wider. So overall, when I tried to put in a base alignment, the wheels were pigeon-toed in at the front, meaning the toe measurement was too, I believe, positive. They were going in too far, and I couldn't remedy that by just adjusting it. There was no room for adjustment. The threads were completely on the tie rods. So I had to swap back to my old steering rack, and that's in right now, but one of the seals is still bad, so it's still leaking. But I did source a remanufactured Celica Toyota rack, which I'm waiting to come in the mail right now. I got it from buyautoparts.com, which seems to be the only people that have it. I tried a plethora of auto parts stores. I tried Advance, tried Napa, O'Reilly's, I tried looking on Rock Auto, Parts Geek. Nobody had it. There was a couple places on eBay that had used ones, but I didn't want to take the shot. And what I also found out is that rebuilding them is very hit or miss. There's a lot more that could go wrong than is typically worth it to try and rebuild the power steering rack. And especially since the price of a rebuild kit is about $70, it's a big gamble. Because if you mess up one thing, then your rack's gonna leak again and you're gonna be out $70. And if you mess up too many things, then you have no power steering rack at all, and the car is going to be undrivable until you figure something else out or rebuild it correctly. So that led me to just continuing to try and dig around, and I had seen this site with this power steering rack for a while. It was about, I think it was $200 for the rack, and then there was an $80 core charge. So I got charged an additional $80 until I send them back my old steering rack. So I'm waiting for that to come in the mail. Once that comes in, I will do a tutorial on how to swap that, since I'm gonna have to do it again. So I'll be swapping that rack, bleeding that out, and then shipping them back the old one to get the core charge back. And that's gonna be it for the drips that are going on. There's a very small oil leak coming from somewhere, but it's nowhere near drastic enough that I need to address right now. It's gotta be something with the timing chain that I either missed a bit of sealant or something's not tightened all the way. But I don't have the time to diagnose it right now. I have a school semester coming up soon, so right now I'm focusing on just getting the car to where it needs to be, that I can take it there and to school, which isn't too far, but it needs to be drivable to get me there and back every day for classes. So it's not a big focus of mine right now to start sifting around for a very minuscule oil drip, which is not even noticeable on the dipstick. So for now, that's the most part of what's going on with the Celica. The hatch is closer to getting done. I did post the video on that a while ago as well. The bottom half of it still needs to get some body filler and a little bit of work, and I need to touch up a small spot on the top, and then I can primer that, and I can check out the glass on it, because I think the glass on my new one might be bad, which means I might need to swap this glass that's on the car into that one. If I can avoid that and just use a glass repair kit to fill in some of those cracks, then I would definitely opt to do that instead, because it's going to be a whole other charge to swap the glasses and then get them painted. or get the hatch painted, and then make a tutorial for swapping that on. So as a result of that, the hatch isn't done, but I plan on finishing the bodywork, getting it painted, and then finding out if the glass is repairable so that I can just swap it on and not have to worry about switching the glass panes out. Other than that, future things that I have planned for the Celica is just going to be some general maintenance for now. There's a couple small mods that I want to do in the meantime. For instance, the lowering springs that I have now, I have a set of iBox springs which I managed to get for free as well on a parts deal. Those are only for the rear though, and I took a look at figuring those out, but it didn't really seem doable at the time. The spring that's in there right now, the OEM ones, are very, very tall, and getting them out is a bit of a pain, so I haven't been successful in doing that yet, and I'm not worried about it until I get some of the other things sorted out. So like I was going on before I got into this tangent, the other things that you should expect coming up for the car is going to be brakes. Brakes are really big and important. I have calipers from a Supra, which I know for a fact is a direct swap, that I need to rebuild those. I want to paint them, and then I want to put those in. And I do have brand new front pads, but I also need to get front rotors. And I also have brand new rear rotors, but I need to get rear pads. So once those parts come in as well, you can expect an overhaul video. You guys should let me know, do you want to see that in separate tutorials? Like, do you want to see a caliper rebuild as one video, and then maybe doing the brakes as another? Do you want front brakes to be separate from rear brakes? Do you want a separate tutorial for bleeding them? I want your guys' opinion on that, because I could do it in one big video. Regardless, I'm guessing just time-wise, I'll probably split the caliper rebuild and the brake job rebuild into 2 videos, just because that would be a little bit more feasible. I think rebuilding a caliper is going to be a whole project on its own. So you guys can let me know as far as the brakes. What do you want to see? How do you want me to cut it up into videos? And that's going to be coming up for this car really soon as well. As far as other issues with it go that I'm not sure if I'm going to make a video or not on, is my radio constantly pops in and out. I believe I mentioned it in a different video, but I have all new speakers in the car. The fronts and rears are swapped out, and those are in there. And I also have a Bluetooth radio that I put in from my old car. But for some reason, which I've yet to conclude on what it is, the radio will go on sometimes when you're driving and it'll work, and then it'll just randomly cut out, whether you stop the car and start it again and it stops working, or midway through the drive the radio will just pop out and it won't come back on. I've yet to figure out what's causing that, and I'm not really sure I want to make a video on that, because diagnosing it has been just a super long process of testing different wires and testing ohms and figuring out if it's the radio, if it's the car. My car for some reason didn't come with an amplifier, so I'm not sure if that's related to the issue. If any of you guys have any idea what that is, I would super appreciate you leaving me a comment on what that could be to set me off in the right direction. So there's that. And then on the route with electrical issues, another really, really weird problem I've been getting is every time I step on the brakes, the 2 front corner lights will turn on, as long as I'm holding the pedal, I should say. Whenever I'm applying the brake pedal, the 2 front corner lights will turn on. The dash light, like the gauge cluster, as well as the temperature controls will both light up, and the radio will dim. It's the most bizarre thing I've ever encountered, and I had one person in a forum suggest to me that it could be something with the brake lights, meaning I checked the wires and nothing was out of array. He said that if there's something wrong, like ground or something is grounding out on the metal, you could get a weird feedback like that. So I took a look and I didn't see anything out of place. The wires all seem to be fine, the harnesses are fine. So I'm not really sure what that is either. Once again, if anyone has an idea of what in the wiring harness could be linked together that could create that issue, if you could let me know in the comments. Again, huge help to me, because I haven't even started to dive into that since I'm still busy with the radio. So that's another thing that's on my checklist, but I don't think I'm going to make a tutorial for that because it's kind of a niche issue. I don't think it's something that's very common, but I know it's not normal at all. So there's that. Other things that I can think of as far as the Celica, I covered the hatch, the springs, the brakes, electrical issues. The AC isn't working, and I'm pretty sure that that's just because it needs a Freon recharge, but the older cars use R12 Freon, which is a lot less accessible than the newer R134A, I think it's called. So I'm definitely not going to be recharging that myself. Freon, from what I understand, is, besides being a toxic chemical, is very expensive and you need specific tools to put it in. I'm fairly certain it's just the fact that there's no Freon, which is why the AC doesn't blow cold, because from the photos I received from the previous seller when they did the engine rebuild, it looked like they completely disconnected the AC compressor, which would lead me to believe the Freon just completely left the system and it needs to be recharged. But I do need to diagnose the compressor first. I need to make sure that that clutch is kicking in and that it's actually functional before I take it to somewhere and have them put hundreds of dollars of Freon into it just to find out that the compressor doesn't even work. So that's another thing that's up on the list. Other than that stuff, the differential is still completely on hold. The limited slip differential from a Supra that I discussed in my very first video, I still have it, but I've made no effort to get anything done on that so far, which sounds lazy, but it's a back burner item because it's totally unnecessary for the car right now. I need to figure out where I can get it rebuilt still, and I'd also like to get it either powder coated or painted so that it's not going to rust at all. But I haven't done anything towards that yet just because it's not really needed at the moment. There's a lot bigger issues to focus on first. And other than that stuff, I think that's about it as far as updates on the Celica goes. So you can look out for some of those videos coming up. And now let's start talking about this slave cylinder and get into fixing that. So as you guys can see, I have the Celica up on my car ramps right now. I figured it would be a little easier than jacking it up to get to the slave cylinder. So I'm going to take you guys underneath the car to try and get a view of the slave cylinder. So if you lie down right here and you take a look, you can see right there that big rubber square with the thing poking into it. And the line are all right there. And that's going to be your clutch slave cylinder. It's only held in by 2 bolts and 1 line, which goes to a hard line up there. And like I said, I have already done the master for this. So what I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to spray these down with WD-40 to hopefully get them out a little easier. And I'm going to take out the 2 bolts before I disconnect the line. And I'm going to try and drip as little fluid as possible. So I want to get everything prepped as best as I can before I do that. So let's take a look at the new clutch slave cylinder and the new line that are going to be going in before we start this. So if we take a look over here at my super fancy workstation, I have the brand new clutch slave cylinder as well as the stainless line I discussed. I got the slave cylinder just from a parts distributor. It looks like this is going to be the numbers that come included in it. And as far as the stainless steel clutch line goes, this I actually got from a seller on eBay. This one in particular is actually designed for a Celica Supra. The fit is the same, it's just that the line is a little bit longer, I believe. And I bought the one for the Celica Supra because I didn't know that they actually sold one specifically for the Celicas before buying this. But it should fit the same, and I've had it for so long now that it's too late to try and exchange. But this ran me about $40, and I want to say that the slave cylinder, since I got it with a discount, was about $23. So all in all, you're looking at a really cheap repair. You're just going to need these parts for what I'm doing, as well as some .3 brake fluid when it comes to bleeding the clutch after these are installed. So first things first that we're going to have to do is going to be to take out the old clutch slave cylinder, and then when we disconnect the line to that, we can reattach this new one, and then we'll be bleeding the clutch to get fresh fluid in there. And after that, the car should be good to go. Okay guys, so here we are into the car. As you can see, I hosed everything down with a little PB Blaster WD-40 just to try and give myself the best odds of getting these loose easily. There's one hose line, so that's rubber line to the hard line right there, that's got a clip and a big line fitting, which that goes right to the clutch slave cylinder, where you have another rubber line to the slave cylinder. And then other than that, there's two 12mm bolts right here, So I think what I'm going to try and do, I want to minimize the amount of fluid loss possible so that bleeding doesn't take me 10 days. But I think I'm going to try and take off the 212s first, and after that I'll try and go for just the hard line to rubber line fitting right there, because I can just put in my new one with the line already attached in one go, and we'll see how that works out. Okay, so wedged underneath the car here, but as you guys can see, I have the new clutch sleeve cylinder set up properly, and I have the stainless steel braided line snugly tightened in there. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to try and take off the hard line, which connects to the opposite end of the soft line on the car, and we'll try and get that off and put this new one on without dripping that much fluid. So I'm going to grab a drain pan just in case I do drip a little bit, and we will try and take that off then, and I'll try to give a good angle, but it's pretty tough under the car. There's not a lot of room, so I can't fit the tripod even at its shortest setting. So I'll try and give you guys a good shot. If not, then I'll give you whatever I can get, and it's pretty straightforward, so it shouldn't be too tough without the visual. So here's what it looks like with the new one in. Like I said, the Celica Superline is a little bit longer, so it's just kind of poked up around there. And what I did learn with this hard line is that there's two clips that hold it into this bracket. There's a metal tab one which goes on this side, and then there's a circular C-clip which goes into this one. And the hard line is a 10, the flexible line is a 17. I'm not sure if that's the same for the stainless line, but I would imagine it probably is. I'll let you guys know once I tighten this up. But it's just loosely threaded in for now, just that it stops dripping fluid. I didn't lose a ton of brake fluid from the system, thankfully, so hopefully bleeding shouldn't be too bad. But what we have to do now is I need to get those 2 clips onto this bracket so that this won't move at all. Then I can snug up the hard line, and then we're going to be on to bleeding. So I'll tighten down these 2 screws and we'll be bleeding it from the slave cylinder. So let's get those clips onto there and tighten that up, and we can then start bleeding the slave cylinder. Alright y'all, so here we are. Everything is tightened up. I'm going to try and slide under here a little better to show you what's going on. So if you take a look here, the hard line to the soft line, this is what I was talking about. So there's a flat square clip which goes to the hard line side of the bracket. And if you can sort of see it, maybe there's a little C clip. See if I can give you a good angle. You can kind of see it if you look closely. There's a little C clip that goes there. And what I did is I connected everything. So I got this loosely threaded in, and I set this up inside the bracket. I pushed the C clip in first, and I kind of forced it forward with my fingers to get the other clip to be able to slide in. And you want the hooked edge going out, so if you ever have to remove this or replace it again, you can grab it with some pliers and pull on this side. We've got the cylinder all bolted up, the plunger and push rod are set up, everything's looking really nice. What we have to do next is bleed it. So we're gonna go up top to the engine bay, and on the driver's side of the car you'll see your clutch master cylinder. We're gonna put some brake fluid in that to top it up back to the proper level. And bleeding these is just like you would bleed your brakes, actually. So it's really easy. You're gonna have someone in your driver's seat, and they're gonna pump the clutch 3 times and hold down on the 3rd. You're gonna have to come under here, crack this bleeder open, let it flow. While they're still holding down the pedal, you'll close it, and then they can let off and pump it up, and you have to keep doing that. And very important to make sure you keep that master cylinder topped up with fluid. If you don't, you will get air in this line, and it will be terrible. It would be a terrible experience, because if it sucks up air, you're gonna have a huge air pocket, your clutch is gonna be super soft, and it might not even work. You might not be able to actually actuate the slave cylinder and use your clutch. So keep that fluid level topped up, and you're gonna wanna bleed this until you get solid fluid and clean fluid coming through the line. And I'll show you the little bleeder tool that I made to do this.
Bruh.
So right here is my very premium, very nice bleeder tool. I made this courtesy of the Chris Fix tutorial. Literally just a water bottle with a hole in the cap and a rubber line that goes through. And I have a zip tie on this end, so this end you stick onto the bleeder and keep it on there the whole time so you don't drip fluid. And you'll want to put a little bit of brake fluid in the bottom of this, just so that in case it tries to vacuum it up, it's not vacuuming up air, it's vacuuming up fluid. And you just connect this to the end of that bleeder valve, and you'll keep this connected while you're bleeding the system. So pretty straightforward. It'll fill up with dirty fluid. You can use the line to see when fluid comes through, when you see air bubbles and when you see dirt. And once you see clean fluid coming through with each bleed, that's when you know you'll be good to go. And you'll have to check with whoever's sitting in the driver's seat to make sure that the pedal feels all right. But let's take a look at the clutch master cylinder now. So on the driver's side of the engine bay, you can see here our clutch master cylinder. My fluid is pretty dirty. I had to replace this and I bled it once, but I guess I didn't do it super thoroughly because it's not as clear as it was at first. But I'm not sure what this little floating black thing is. It was in my old one, so I just threw it in the new one as well. And I've already got it topped up. I'm just waiting for some help to bleed the clutch out, and I'll try and get a clip of that. But it's same deal as doing your brakes, so it's pretty straightforward. Just gonna kind of brush past that until we finish up, and then I'll do an outro for the video. Alright guys, so I apologize, the bleeding clips weren't the most like in-depth, they're super explanatory. Like I said, the bleeding process is the exact same as brakes. The only difference with the clutch is when you let go of the bleeder, like when you crack it open, whoever is pumping your clutch pedal, it's gonna go to the floor and it's gonna stay at the floor. They just have to pop it back up when you start to bleed it again for the next round. That's the only difference there is between bleeding a clutch and bleeding brakes. So that's all done. I've got fresh fluid in there and the clutch feels all right. I'm gonna take it for a short test drive and that should be it. So we'll get to that. Alright guys, so I just took it for a test drive. I was planning to take a little footage driving of it since I realized I've never actually shown the car driving on the channel before. And I have this cheap window mount, but the size of the camera that I'm using and the window mount angle, like this weird shape that it gives, I can't mount it reasonably to the car window. It gives you this horrendous like twisted view, and I didn't think it was worth it until I invested in something a little better than this. So unfortunately I'm not going to drive the car in today's video, but I will report back that the clutch feels insanely smooth, and I used to get a little bit of feedback when shifting into gear. There'd be a little bit of like a clink of where you could just feel the trans through the shifter, and that's gone now. It's not really sure how it's connected to the slave cylinder or the clutch line, but maybe just the fact that there's completely brand new fluid and everything in that system's been replaced. It's just a little bit smoother operating than it was before, but all in all, super easy job, 110% worth the money, and the outcome was great. I mean, the car feels really good. So thank you guys for watching this tutorial. I hope it might help you out on your Celica if you have to do this at any point. And I will try and link the parts that I used in the description below, so that if any of you guys want to get that stainless clutch line, then you can find it there. So thank you guys again for watching. Please comment what else you want to see, and if you feel up to it, please like and subscribe, because watching this channel grow makes me so happy, and it's so exciting to see people that are interested in this car and interested in the work that I'm doing. So thank you guys again. I'll see you in the next one.